What could have been a Cinderella story for one driver and just a great day for another ended in complete disaster. In other news, Kyle Larson was lights out in yet another race. Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, it's Taylor Kitchen and welcome back to Above the Yellow Line on the ATYL Media channel, where today we're talking about the Advent Health 400 at Kansas Speedway. And you know, when we go to Kansas, we are for sure going to get a fantastic race. Now, did we get a fantastic race this time? I don't know. We're going to talk about it a little later in the show, but what's for certain is Kyle Larson in that 5 team just put on another dominant performance this season, capturing his third win of 2025 in the month of May. It is a very big month for Kyle Larson, and everything needs to go right, particularly with the weather. So fingers crossed, everything remains good on the forecast for the next few weeks. But a great way to start off the month of May for Kyle Larson in that 5 team. But it didn't seem like it was going to be a runaway win, at least not at first, because his teammate Chase Elliott had a pretty stellar car to start. Chase Elliott actually almost took the lead from Kyle Larson coming to the line to end stage 1, and Kyle Larson was like, dude, the 9 car is really fast. I don't know what else we need to do. When we kind of found the Achilles heel of that 5 team in particular with Kyle Larson, which is abusing that right rear tire. They saw that it was treading a little more than they would have liked, and it was like, hey, you need to nurse that tire around the track. You cannot abuse it as much as you have been. So that was something that Kyle Larson had to manage during the race and found that, oh shoot, like that could cost me the lead and or the win as we come down the road here. But when it got to pit road, Chase Elliott was off pit road before that 5 team coming to the start of stage 2, and Kyle Larson was like, okay, what do I need to do here? Obviously, Kyle got the lead back and he was totally fine, but what helped him was later in the race, the 9 team had a pretty rough stop over 14 seconds where the jack fell from the 9 car before they had that right rear tire secured. It cost them plenty of spots, of course, through the field, and the 9 car just wasn't able to gain that back. So it took the 9 out of contention, and it was smooth sailing from there on out for that 5 car. It was smooth sailing beforehand, but if Chase Elliott was going to be his only real competition during the remainder of the race, it was gone at that point. Not to say Kyle Larson didn't have any real competition besides that 9 car, because obviously through the race, the 9 team just wasn't as great as they had started the race off on, but that 20 car of Christopher Bell was also pretty strong considering all things. So in that second position, we have Christopher Bell, and my goodness, between the first so many races of this season, I believe half of them have been won by Larson or Bell, which is pretty insane. And the amount of 1-2 finishes we've seen between that 5 car and that 20 car in the past few seasons, also pretty crazy to watch. So this could be a really cool battle if it is Larson versus Bell for the championship. I know Bell has had a rough few weeks, but maybe we could see that. I think that'd be pretty cool seeing 2 dirt guys kind of battle it out for the NASCAR Cup Series championship this year. But going to the 3rd place finish of Ryan Blaney, I know last week Blaney was like, I can't do anything right. Coming home with a 3rd place finish is phenomenal for Blaney. I know he wants that win like his teammates Joey Logano and Austin Cindric have been able to have, but coming off of weekends where he's saying, I can't do anything right, I don't know what else we need to do, he should take the 3rd place finish. Pretty good. Somebody else who should be taking the finish they got is Chase Briscoe. I believe this matches his best finishes of the season in that 4th position. A strong showing for Chase Briscoe. I know he's pretty decent at the mile and a halfs anyway, so this is just another testament to that 19 team and hopefully can continue that momentum going into these weeks where we do have a short track race with the All-Star event. So hopefully maybe some can cash in on that event, but then of course we go into the 600, another mile and a half for that 19 team to hopefully do well. In 5th place, we have Alex Bowman, a great top 5 for that team, considering some of the adversity they faced throughout the event. You kind of had an up and down day through the field, but finished, I think, exactly where they belonged. Obviously, I know there was some frustration, but you know what? Take the result and move on. In 6th position, Josh Berry, as we said, he is becoming a fantastic racer at these intermediate tracks in the Cup Series. We know he's great at them in the Xfinity Series, but for the Cup Series, it's great to see that 21 car contending for wins, and I think he quite possibly could have today, just needed a little bit more on that 21 Ford, but overall, fantastic day for Josh Berry. Ryan Preece, another Ford driver. Preece has been doing so well for this team, and great to see that RFK machine getting great results right behind him. His RFK teammate with Chris Buescher. What was comical about all of this is Chris Buescher started the race in 2nd, and who was on the pole for this race? Kyle Larson. Very reminiscent of how things ended in that 2024 spring race at Kansas, but a good result for Chris Buescher, all things considered. He had a tough pit stop in the middle of the race that saw him sitting kind of outside the top 20, so he had to work his way back through the pack. But again, I think the moral of the story for this top 10 is just take the result. After some frustrating weeks of lackluster performances for some of these guys, take the top 10 result and move on. Rounding out the top 10, we have a Joey Logano in 9th and 10th. John Hunter Nemechek with back-to-back top 10s. Can I just say, I've been so impressed by John Hunter Nemechek this season in the 42. I know that there were some kind of lulls in the performance a few weeks ago. All things considered, though, seeing that 42 car contend for top 10 finishes as opposed to where it had been the past few seasons with John Hunter Nemechek in the car or not, considering it a win. I think Legacy Motor Club needs some of that good luck and some of those good results on their side, and if John Hunter Nemechek is going to be the guy to provide that for them, let it be. So great result for that 42 car. Before we get into our race rating, I want to note a few more finishing positions from drivers that either had a good day or a bad day. Let's start off by talking about Corey Heim making his first start of the NASCAR Cup Series season in a 2311 racing equipment and finished the best of the 2311 racing brigade, finishing 13th. That is a great result for somebody making their first Cup Series start of the year. Of course, has made a few Cup Series start ahead of the 2025 season. Nonetheless, fantastic result for Corey Heim. What concerned me, though, was the efforts of the rest of the 2311 group. We have Tyler Reddick finishing in the 17th position. We know this to be a great track for him, a track he has won at before, but they came into this weekend just not really feeling it. And then during the race, Tyler Reddick complained on the radio that he just felt like they brought a tight setup. The car was way too tight when it turned the way he needed it to ultimately have a good result. For Bubba Wallace, unfortunately, finishing in that 33rd position was taken out on an incident on lap 213 with Justin Haley and Eric Jones. Austin Dillon also involved in this one. They took it 5 wide, and we know going 5 wide at any racetrack is pretty risky. Kansas, in some corners and some straightaways, could maybe manage it, but ultimately did not end well, of course, for Bubba Wallace there. Right in between there with a 27th finishing position was Riley Herbst. Unfortunately, what kind of did him in for the day was a speeding penalty on pit road around lap 204. Of course, we can't end our conversation about the drivers finishing outside the top 10 without talking about the stars of the week. And when I talk about the stars of the week, if you guys have not seen the video that NASCAR did announcing the Homestead Miami return to the championship weekend in 2026 with Brad Keselowski and Kyle Busch, I don't know what you're doing. You need to watch it because it's literally phenomenal. But I was hoping after their star-studded performances in that video that they would have a fantastic weekend at Kansas because it is generally a good track for both of those drivers. Brad Keselowski was running inside the top 5. He was actually running in the second position at one point. For Kyle Busch, he was consistent within the top 10, kind of dancing around that place, and boy oh boy, do both of them need good results. And unfortunately, neither of them finished this race with good results. Let's start with Kyle Busch. Right before his teammate's incident on lap 213, Kyle Busch was involved in an incident on lap 208. He was at the bottom of a 4-wide move with Josh Berry and Noah Gragson in particular here, and the two of those made contact, sending the 4 into the 8, and that's all she wrote for Kyle Busch's great day. Understandably, Kyle Busch was pretty frustrated over the radio because it was looking like it could have finally been a top day for that team because the last top 10 that Kyle Busch had was a 10th place finishing position at Darlington. And before that, you look to the 4th race of the season at Phoenix. Before that race, they had a good string of top 10 finishing positions, but since then, it's been outside the top 15 or outside the top 20 the past 3 weeks in a row. If we're going to count Kansas in that, it's been outside the top 20 finishes for that 8 car. Not where we want to see the 3-time champion of the NASCAR Cup Series. We don't want to see him finishing in these results at all on a consistent basis. So hopefully the rest of the month goes better for them. Like I mentioned earlier, we have North Wilkesboro coming up. It is a non-points paying race, but hopefully maybe, some cash can turn things around for Kyle Busch. I don't know. Or at least the 600 is a good showing for that 18. But you just hate to see that. And you especially hate to see a driver who was competing inside the top 3 during this race wreck out with a cut right rear tire. We're talking about Brad Keselowski. I was gutted last week when the 6 team had a bad result. And I was gutted this week, especially when the results just didn't show for the efforts that they put forward because we finally saw raw speed from Brad. He got stage points in the second stage. On pit road, 2 of his 4 fastest stops of the season came at Kansas during this race on Sunday. That was a stat from the broadcast. So everything was clicking on all cylinders finally. And then on lap 195, the 6 car cut a right rear tire, and I just hate it for them. I mean, there's nothing you can do. It is a helpless feeling. Brad, after the race, talked to the media, and he was like, it's been a rough season, but There was a lot of changes made with this team in the offseason going into this year, and I feel like we're finally kind of clicking as a group, and that's a step in the right direction. The results might not show it, but we're making steps in the right direction, and that's all you can ask for. But to think that Brad Keselowski could be in a must-win situation in the points right now is pretty depressing. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, you look up what the other drivers on his team are doing with Ryan Preece and Chris Buescher, and it's just not comparable at all. I mean, the big change here with Brad Keselowski is he has a new crew chief this season. Not new to him necessarily. They work together at Penske, but with Jeremy Bolins. Just it's a lot different for Brad this year, and I hope the results can follow. I don't know. Everyone's saying, Brad just needs to retire. Brad needs to give it up. Brad's losing his edge. I don't think that's the case. I don't know what the case is. I just think that this team needs more time to put those results together, because we saw what they could do during this race. We saw the speed that they could have had. It's just a matter of putting together a race from start to finish, and unfortunately, that was not the case for that 6 team today. All right, the time has come to rate this race above or below the yellow line presented by Happy Hour Racing, and I know expectations were high going into this race at Kansas because we were all hoping that this Kansas race would break the lull, dull, and snooze fest of races that have been the past few weeks. Now, snooze fest to me is a little bit of a harsh word to use with what we've seen over the past few weeks of racing, but I just know fans haven't been pleased with it. On this show, we've been dancing around at 50% rating these races, just to be honest. This race definitely was above the yellow line for me. I don't think it came close to 50%, but it wasn't the thrilling, exciting action that we've come to know for the Kansas race, and why that was this time, I don't know. We had a close battle to end stage 1, which was pretty exciting. I mean, you, of course, had one driver pretty much run away with it, but that's not to say that there weren't pretty interesting battles in the mid-pack. But I think when we're treated to fantastic racing from one track every single season, you expect the same for the following year and for years to come. And that's just not the case here. I also understand that these issues with the Gen 7 car, with the aero package and how it's performing on these tracks, is becoming more and more of an issue. And not to say that we saw more of an aero issue at this track than we saw years previously. I just think this race just played out a little differently. And I think these teams are figuring out these Gen 7 cars more and more and more, which is kind of relaxing some of the intense finishes that we see with the Gen 7 car in the NASCAR Cup Series in this season. When the Gen 7 car was new, it was a clean slate for everybody. Everybody was trying to figure it out together. Obviously, the teams that are going to have more resources, more people, more, time on their hands to figure out these cars are going to start to do better over the years. And that's what we're seeing in 2025. Hendrick Motorsports has it figured out. Jacobs Racing, for the most part, has it figured out. Then there's some outliers here and there where you see really good results on a consistent basis from, like, the 21 car of Josh Berry. Obviously, one win on the season, and I think he has more to follow this season. But for the teams that are at the top, like Penske, Hendrick, and Gibbs, they are figuring out this Gen 7 car. They have it figured out, and they're finding a way to win these races in a dominant fashion. And that's what we're seeing, of course, from Hendrick Motorsports, kind of overarchingly here. So it's not to say that the issues with the Gen 7 car have increased. I do think that they kind of have. But I also think the expectations and the closeness of these results needs to be set way lower. We are multiple years in with this Gen 7 car. The finishes are not going to be as close as they were in years past. And they also could be, because they have been in the past few races too. All that to say, though, let's manage our expectations. Wasn't an awesome race, wasn't an awful race, but for Kansas, disappointing. I'm going to give it a 68% above the yellow line. I could go with a 70 or 71, but I'm going to go with a 68. I hate to say the Kansas race kind of didn't meet my expectations, but it kind of didn't meet my expectations. So sorry to end on a bummer here, but what did you think of the Kansas race? Let me know in the comments below. And coming up on the NASCAR schedule, we are headed to the All-Star event at North Wilkesboro. I already did a video breaking down the format. Fingers crossed, fingers and toes crossed that the product is much better. I have a feeling that the product will be helped by the promoter's caution and some of the fun things that NASCAR is throwing in there. But all that to say, we will be breaking it down right here next week on Above the Yellow Line. But everyone, make sure to go to AboveTheYellowLine.com to check more out about us, more of our content, and to find our partners that support us along the way. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and until next time, I'll see ya. Bye.